Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Deep Focus Show with a special video edition coming at you now. I'm Aiden,
I'm Andrew.
and what we're going to be doing on this episode is we're going to be doing kind of like our fantasy Oscars, what we give various films. And for this episode, we're going to be doing 1940 to 1944. What would be our wins for the various categories? So yeah, I'm excited to start up doing this. What about you?
Yeah, it should be pretty cool. It's kind of an idea that I hadn't really thought of doing before, but once I got into it, it was kind of neat to think, oh, you know what? Here's where like a performance that stands out, you know.
Yeah, I had to think about that a few times because there are definitely films where I wouldn't even say they're like top three of the year or something, but they have like the best supporting actress or something. And that like kind of revealed itself to me a few times um, over doing this. But yeah, so
Yeah, it
yeah,
should be fun.
you wanna kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to, run through all my categories for the first year, or like what were you thinking?
Yeah, I guess go back we can go back and forth with all our categories and just give like a quick reason why.
All right. Well, I guess starting in 1940. I guess we'll start with Best Picture, and that was a pretty easy one for me. I'm going with Rebecca. It's a kind of a classic from Alfred Hitchcock, and lots of it's almost like two movies in one without to say anything else in it. There's quite an interesting structure to it, and it's pretty magical. So I would recommend if for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Yeah, people like me maybe.
And
Yes.
this one actually did win Best Picture, so I'm actually backing them up here. So
Yeah. Yeah, and
and
there are movies that I haven't watched. That I think the two big ones from this period that I'm missing are Rebecca and Double Indemnity. I think if I had those two, I could be a bit more confident in being like 100% on my lists. But yeah, so yeah, what were your other category wins? Would you say?
so I'm also giving Hitchcock the Best Director. I mean, I think I'm not always going to be doing this, but in this case, I think you know just the actual aesthetic of the film and how he chose to make it made a big difference there. So, but for screenplay, I'm going to mix it up a bit, and I'm going to give that one to The Shop Around the Corner. Just a really classic romantic comedy, and it really thrives off the dialogue and the interplay between the two leads. So I think I would give them the nod there for screenplay. Shop Around the Corner. And so like I felt like I had to do a little bit of research, to give respect to some of the picks that maybe I haven't seen, but maybe I have some familiarity with. So this is kind of where I'm jumping into that with Best Actor. So I'm going to give that to Henry Fonda, Grapes of Wrath. Heard nothing but good things about that, and I'm a big Henry Fonda guy, so I'll give him the Best Actor. For Best Actress, dipping into Shop Around the Corner again, Margaret Sullivan, again, is just kind of that, the classic kind of, like bantering leads, and I just really like how the dynamic works in that film, and she's playing off Jimmy Stewart, so it's like, I
Yeah.
mean, could have easily given him something too, but I think the Best Actor might have been a bit more competitive for me this year, so I'm going to give that to her, Margaret Sullivan. Supporting actor had a bit more trouble with because a lot of the ones that I'd seen, people didn't stand out as much.
Yeah.
But I have seen Philadelphia Story, and I'll give that one to Cary Grant, who's always a lot of fun, especially in those kind of like, fast-paced character movies. And then lastly, for supporting actress, I'm going to give that to Judith Anderson and Rebecca. She's an interesting character, one of few words a lot of the time, but she brings a presence, and I think presence goes a long way in kind of supporting your leads. So yeah, that's
Yeah, a lot of great picks. I don't share any, but that makes it interesting.
I know there's a lot of years here where we haven't seen the same film, so
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of part of the problem. But it makes it more interesting. So my best picture winner, this is one I'm fairly set on as like a top 5 film of this decade, not even just winning this year. I'm going with The Thief of Baghdad by Alexander Korda, which is just like this very epic fantasy film, visually just really opulent and kind of magnificent with the genie and the wizards and all of these, crazy outlandish characters. But it also is shot in like really gorgeous, like stunning Technicolor, kind of reminiscent of the Wizard of Oz in that way. And it's really a treat to watch. And I'm gonna split Best Director. I'm gonna give it to Boris Ingster from Stranger on the Third Floor, which I think as a movie has some flaws. I think it's too short. I think the middle section is kind of weak, but in terms of like the staging, the cinematography, all of those factors, I think it's like the best directed film. Like it's the most kind of, I don't know, like challenging one in terms of all of the different ways it's visually told. So I wanted to give that a director nod, even though I think as a film it has some kind of weak points. And then for Best Actor and Best Actress, I'm going with the film I just saw recently. I'm going to go with Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell from His Girl Friday, which is just really enjoyable, really fun, super fast, which works with the screenplay. I think Howard Hawks, the director, actually like timed how fast the dialogue was to make sure it was ramping up faster and faster. And it really comes across on screen. It's really just super enjoyable and super fun. So yeah, that's a really good one. For supporting actor, I'm going to The Thief of Baghdad with Conrad Veidt, who plays the main villain role. He's a really underrated actor. He also was great in Casablanca as well as other films. He brings kind of especially when he plays the villain. There was another film this year where he plays the hero that I'll mention on, but I didn't think that one was as much of a hit. But yeah, this is just a really classic role as the evil Grand Vizier. It's just really fun, really, and it adds to that kind of storybook charm of the film, which I really like. For Best Supporting Actress, I'm going to pick Valerie Hobson from Contraband. I think this film is also one that has a few problems. I think it's kind of got a sluggish first act, and the lead is not that good, but I really like Valerie Hobson as a supporting character. I think she's the way she delivers a lot of the kind of like romantic lines and a lot of the more comedic stuff. I think it's really strong. So yeah, that was a highlight for me. And then for Best Screenplay, I'm going with Charles Levere, who wrote His Girl Friday, which I think wins screenplay because of how wordy and like rambling he can make it without losing track of making it really funny, which I think is very difficult. Like it seems like a very balanced skill to try to aim for. So I thought that was very strong. So that would be my 1940 picks.
Good stuff. I have also seen His Girl Friday, so I know that the two there they were really great together. So great picks. And Conrad Veidt, I know him more from like when he was like a silent actor, but was kind of there the whole way and did a lot of cool stuff. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think he closed out in like early 40s. I think he died in 1943, so
Right.
not gonna have many more chances to nominate him. So
Yeah. Yeah, Casablanca is probably one of his last chances.
yeah, I think so. But yeah.
All right, 1941. So actually might be a couple films I like more, but I think if I'm trying to be honest with myself, the one that should win Best Picture is probably the obvious one, Citizen Kane. And I'm also going to back up Orson Welles for Best Director. I mean, just some of the choices creatively made in this film, like visually, just phenomenal and ahead of its time and groundbreaking. So I can't really say no to either of those. But screenplay, that one, I'm going to go over to The Maltese Falcon. It's a little bit more stagier of a film, but I really like it, and it's really clever. And Maltese Falcon, kind of the class example of like that, object that centers around the film, the MacGuffin type thing that just creates all this conflict and interaction. So great film there. For actor, again, I'm going to go over to Orson Welles. It's just such a iconic role in cinema, and that he gets to play him kind of like over the course of this lifetime of a character, and he really stands out. Best actress, I had a harder time with just based on the films that I'd seen. I did end up going with kind of more of a research-based one. This one goes to, well, I guess not, Joan Fontaine in Suspicion. I almost wanted her to give it to Rebecca the previous year, but maybe thinking back to back is a little bit too much. So this is kind of like a middle-level Hitchcock film to me. I've seen it a long time ago, but she does a really good job of like this, lead actress in distress. It's a bit of a thriller type, and she's playing off Cary Grant, which is actually an interesting role for him too. Yeah. But couldn't say no to Orson Welles. So yeah, so Joan Fontaine gets it for Suspicion here. And then supporting actor, this one I'm giving to Peter Lorre for The Maltese Falcon. He's always an interesting character actor, and it's kind of neat to see him in this kind of like A-list film. And I guess he's another one that shows up again in Casablanca later. Yeah. But yeah, I'm giving it to Peter Lorre here. And then supporting actress. So this is more of a personal favorite. I'm going with Maria Ouspenskaya, and she plays the gypsy woman in The Wolf Man. This character really stands out. She basically kind of creates this whole archetype that you see in like future films. That like wise older character kind of knows kind of what's going on, and yeah, she's great. If you haven't seen The Wolf Man, I think she would really make her mark for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about we have a lot more in common this time. I think we line up on 4. So, which part of it is because I'm such an Orson Welles like super fan, and I'm just gonna like give anything he made really good scores. But it is kind of interesting how like thinking about it, I was thinking like when it comes to The Maltese Falcon, like it seems like in those early Warner Brothers films, they just like always had the exact same actors, because it's like Maltese Falcon, same cast, Casablanca, basically the same cast, Across the Pacific, Passage to Marseille, like all of their early 40s movies, it's always like Humphrey Bogart, Sidney Greenstreet, Peter Lorre's usually there. Like it's always the same people.
Yeah, it's almost like its own universe with this like
exactly. But yeah, my best picture is Citizen Kane. I'm just like a huge Orson Welles fanboy, so this was kind of a no-brainer for me. But I will say I'm a little torn on it, because The Maltese Falcon is my favorite of the films I don't have as a winner of one of these years. So yeah, but I obviously I couldn't say no to this one for Best Picture. And then I gave Orson Welles Best Director because I think the just amount of ideas that's on display, especially for like a first time 24-year-old director, is insane. And then for screenplay, I went with Maltese Falcon, John Huston. I think it's a super well crafted, like almost like a prototypical action-y screenplay with the MacGuffin and kind of that ending sequence. And it seems to like be really ahead of its time and not being so dialogue centric and being more about the mystery and that kind of thing. And then for Best Actor, I'm going with Orson Welles, Citizen Kane. Yeah, again, it's really insane how he can really sell you on all the different characters that he kind of has to play throughout the course of the film in terms of like different stages of Kane's life. So that's really cool. And yeah, he has to demonstrate so much range, which I think he pulls off, and especially directing and writing the film too is pretty insane, like triple threat. Um, and then Best Actress, I'm going with Mary Astor in The Maltese Falcon. I think she's really good. She really sells her character as the kind of like femme fatale, almost like prototype. I don't really know if that cliche had fully been entrenched yet, but it's really strong. And especially the way she plays off Bogart is really cool, which I think he would be a pretty strong runner-up for Best Actor for his role in Maltese Falcon and for his role in High Sierra. I think both of them I considered giving it to. And then Best Supporting Actor and Actress are both going to be Citizen Kane ones. I'm going with Joseph Cotten for actor and Dorothy Comingore for actress. I think both of them are just like really strong. And they complement the film so well. And I think it's very cool too. Like a lot of people don't remember about Citizen Kane that every actor in it was their feature film debut, because essentially what RKO did was like buy out a theater unit, a theater troupe, and get it to produce films. So Wells, Cotton, Everett Sloan, Dorothy Comingore, Agnes Moorehead, Ruth Warwick, it's all of their feature film first times, which I think is really insane. So I wanted to give a shout out to the supporting cast there. So yeah.
Very nice. Nice to see some overlap there, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just hard to argue with Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
There. So I guess we're at 1942 now. And this is, I guess, where we get into that technicality with Casablanca.
Yeah.
Having screened once in 42, but is considered a 43 film for the Oscars. So, I mean,
yeah,
it actually made it harder for me because I haven't seen that many like notable films in 42. But I mean, I've heard you talk about this one before, and I'm gonna give it to The Magnificent Ambersons for Best Picture. Just everything I know about it. I mean, I know that it had its, like studio intervention issues, but it's still pretty magnificent, as the title says. But for director, I'm going with one that I've seen and that I find very interesting, the choices that were made. This is Jacques Tourneur for Cat People. And it's a horror film that, contrary to what a lot of was done at the time, where you have like a big monster at the center of it, it's mostly psychological and takes place off screen. So some of the choices for filmmaking just really feel like they're kind of setting the stage for those low budget horror films where less is more. And just the way they film, some of the scariest scenes are the ones where nothing actually happens, but you're wondering what's going to happen. There's the classic bus scene where just all built on atmosphere. So
yeah.
And I guess shout out to Val Lewton too, because apparently he's almost the auteur. He's a producer, but he's the auteur of a lot of these films. So yeah, screenplay, going back to Magnificent Ambersons, really seems like it kind of stands out in this year that doesn't really have as many films. Like from what I could tell, I guess it was wartime, so maybe there weren't as many that were being made.
It was like the first year where the war really affects like film production, and even like the biggest hits, even like Magnificent Ambersons was like already finished before the war started, so it wasn't as much affected.
It's a bit of a factor here, but yeah. And yeah, speaking more of Magnificent Ambersons, Joseph Cotten, Best Actor.
Yeah, great pick.
And he's one who I actually wanted, I guess a little bit of a spoiler alert, because Casablanca is showing up next year instead of this year. I might have given him a Best Actor next year without Casablanca.
Okay,
so
yeah.
It's kind of nice to give it to him here. And then this is where I had to go a little bit, relying on, the history for Best Actress. And I believe she actually did win the Best Actress, Greer Garson for Mrs. Miniver. Everything that I know, it's a bit of a powerhouse performance for her. I mean, her character's the title of the film, even. So, yeah, so I'll give her Best Actress. Supporting Actor. This is where my horror affinity strikes again. That one goes to Bela Lugosi as Igor in The Ghost of Frankenstein. I think it's a really underrated character for him. A lot of people just think of him as Dracula, but this is arguably a better character of his from a performance standpoint, in my opinion. He's being less of himself. He's bringing more of this seedy kind of henchman character to the table, and he's really good at it. Probably would have given it to him for Son of Frankenstein, but he shows up again here. And then lastly, Agnes Moorehead for Magnificent Ambersons. I've seen her in a few things after this. I think she always puts in a great performance. Yeah. I guess from what you were saying, this is basically where things start for her. So great for her.
Yeah. This is kind of the start for that. And yeah, we do have a bit of crossover this time. And most of my wins are going to come from watching the Magnificent Ambersons. And then also I dig into, this is kind of the first year where Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger really get going. I think they're awesome. So they have two films that I'm going to be giving nods to. But yeah, I was going to watch Cat People for the series, but I didn't get around to it. My last few days were pretty busy, but I know a bit about Jacques Tourneur. I've seen some of his films, and I know it was actually shot on the same sets as the Magnificent Ambersons were, because RKO wanted to get more out of the set. But yeah, so my best picture is going to be that Magnificent Ambersons, and I also gave that Best Director and Screenplay. And yeah, just to touch on it really quick, I think this one is just a really great movie. I think the direction, in terms of just cinematography, shots, is maybe even a progression a bit from Citizen Kane. He really gets into super long shots in this one, which he also does in some of his next ones, where it's like 3-minute, 4-minute shot, really long. Gets really into like the super dark, shadowy look for most of the film, and which is really cool, especially when you get the brief contrast of the few scenes that are kind of set out in the snow or something. And I give it a screenplay nod, because I think if you could include like narrators in acting categories, I would want to give it to Orson Welles, who doesn't play any character in the film, but he does narrate the whole thing, which I think is a really great performance. And I think it's a super great use of the medium, which I think comes through the screenplay. So I gave it the big 3 awards for that one. And then I also gave it a nod for supporting actress, again with Agnes Moorehead, who was was nominated. This movie picked up, I think, 4 nominations. Got nominated for like picture, supporting actress, I want to say like art direction and screenplay maybe. So got a few nods. But of course hampered by really bad box office numbers. So yeah, I'm gonna give this to her. And then best actor, I'm going with Laurence Olivier in 49th Parallel, which in America, I guess would be called The Invaders, which is just a really great early early Powell and Pressburger performance. It's really good and really strong. He plays like a Canadian fur trapper, which is a kind of a weird role for a guy like him, but he really does it well. He plays against the Nazi agents who landed in Canada, and it's really engaging. It's a really great movie. Probably, I guess this is another weird one where it like premiered in 41, but I'm counting it in 42 because it had it's like general release. So yeah, I'm going with that, which then leads me to best actress, which I'm going to give to Georgette Withers in One of Our Aircraft is Missing, which is like the follow-up kind of to 49th Parallel, where 49th Parallel was a war film about like German agents landing in British territory. This one's about British agents landing in Nazi occupied Holland. So it's a cool contrast, doing them back to back. And her role is really strong. She essentially plays a very famous like Dutch socialite who's pretending to be allied with the new occupying Germans, but's actually like harboring Allied soldiers and stuff. It's a really cool performance, really cool role. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that as one I really enjoy. And then for best supporting actor, which is the last one I got to talk about, I'm also going to go One of Our Aircraft is Missing with Godfrey Turrell, who plays an older captain in amongst the men who get stranded across enemy lines. And it's a really cool, compelling performance about how he's kind of like, he's the oldest, but he's not the highest ranked. So he kind of has a chip on his shoulder about that. And he really comes into his own as an important character by like the third act. So I think all of that is really strong. So yeah, for that, I'm going with One of Our Aircraft is Missing, which gives me like a 4-2-1 split, I guess. So yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, I don't really know much about those last couple of films, but I will have a Powell Pressburger mention, I guess, if we continue on the 40s later in the season.
If you're talking about what I think you are, I still haven't seen it, which I need to watch as soon as possible. But
we'll see. Anyways,
yeah.
43. So now we can count Casablanca, and I'm gonna give it Best Picture. It's a classic, kind of one of my favorites of like, the ones that you hear about the classic 40s films. Really like it. And the dialogue is really snappy, so quotable, so many quotes. So I'm also going to give it screenplay. So Casablanca gets those two. But for director, I'm going to give Alfred Hitchcock another nod for Shadow of the Doubt. It has some really cool choices. Like this first-person camera point of view shot is really cool. Brings out the performances. A lot of tension involved in that one. So he gets Best Director. And I guess we'll move on to actor. So this will be another Casablanca nod. Humphrey Bogart doing probably his most famous performance out of many famous performances. Couldn't imagine anyone else in that lead role. It's pretty much just like the prototypical Humphrey Bogart performance. And for Best Actress, that'll go to Teresa Wright for Shadow of a Doubt. She does a really good job as this kind of like this innocent character at the beginning of the film who gradually, has to contend with this, darker side to her Uncle Charlie. And so I think she does a great job there. Supporting actor, big fan of this guy. Casablanca again, Claude Rains. Love him. He's part of that, classic ending of the film. Does a great job in pretty much everything I've seen. So really happy to give him the nod there. And then I had to kind of dig deep for supporting actress because I wasn't sure what I wanted to go with. So this goes to Jane Darwell, the Oxbow incident. And I watched some clips online of that, and I think it's just a really interesting position to be put in. She's basically, from what I remember, she's put into this kind of, how do I describe it? I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Anyways, those are my 43 picks.
Yeah, well, I've heard of the Expo incident, and it's one of the like 150 films I've meant to watch for doing stuff like this. But yeah, totally in agreement. I've got like near a Casablanca sweep. I think it is so great. Best Picture, I'm giving it to that. It's such a classic. Like every single line you can quote, it's so perfect. For director and screenplay, I'm also giving Casablanca, so Michael Curtis, and then Epstein, and Coke, which is just, the screenplay is so well written. It's such a good example where I think there's 5 credited writers, and it's still so so cohesive, which is really crazy to me. Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman going to be actor and actress winners for Casablanca for me. I'll say I don't think this is my favorite Humphrey Bogart performance, but I think it's like his most iconic for a really good reason. Like the whole like white suit and all that, like it's such an iconic character. And supporting actor, I'm also going to go with Claude Rains' Casablanca, especially the ending, which is just really classic, how his character shifts. I think it's really rare to get that much depth out of a supporting character, which is really cool. But honestly, any of the supporting actors in Casablanca could have won, whether it's Rains, Laurie, Greenstreet, Hein Reed, Veidt, like any of them really have I think it's just such a classic film, and probably my number 3 of this period. I think the late 40s I like a little bit more than early, because I think wartime is kind of hampering it a bit too much, but this is definitely top 10 of the decade and maybe top 5. And then the one I have that isn't it is going to be Agnes Moorehead, Journey into Fear, supporting actress. This is a movie I think has a lot of problems because I think it's kind of unfinished in the way it exists. There's a lot of just weird problems in the middle of it and kind of choppy pacing, but I think her performance is still really good. And I could have also given this directing as well, because there's a lot of really cool angles and focus stuff they're doing. But yeah, just to get this on the board, because it's a film I do like in spite of its problems. So yeah, her for Journey into Fear supporting.
Great stuff. So I guess that leads us to our last one, which is 44.
Yeah.
This is the one, the big one that you had said, I think you hadn't gotten around to yet.
Yeah.
So I'm giving Double Indemnity Best Picture. And there's a bunch of movies that I like from this year, but I can't really turn that one down. Also Best Director, it's just a film that kind of captivates you from the beginning and doesn't really let you go. So Best Director and Best Screenplay. So it's the 3 big film awards, all to Double Indemnity. It's just a great film. I guess it's a film noir. I don't even think of it as film noir. I think of it almost more like a thriller about one thing leading to another. But
yeah,
it definitely has a bit of those trappings too. But for Best Actor and Actress, I'm actually going with another great film from that year that really is about the 2 characters. So that's Charles Boyer and Ingrid Bergman in Gaslight. As far as I know, this is where the term like gaslighting comes from, is like this story. and the husband trying to drive the wife crazy, and it's really intense throughout. So they did a great job, especially Ingrid Bergman. I didn't give it to her for Casablanca, but I got to give it to her for this one. And supporting actor, dipping back into Double Indemnity, that goes to Edward G. Robinson. He'd been around for a while doing stuff. He does kind of a good job as the person that what's the main character in that? Been a while for me since I've seen this now. Fred McMurray's character, Walter Neff. So he has to deal with that at the insurance company. Edward G. Robinson, and he did a great job. And then supporting actress. This is another one where I'm digging a bit deep. Curse of the Cat People. You might not think of this as an award-worthy film, but it's barely even a sequel to the film. It almost does something completely different. It's very psychological in its own way, almost dreamlike. And the winner I'm given to is Ann Carter, and she's only like 7 or 8 years old, but she basically carries the film. Simone returns and is basically considered the lead, but I think a lot of the heavy lifting is put on Ann Carter's shoulders. And if you're looking for like a really great child performance from this era, I would highly recommend that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one, but that one's cool in that it's Robert Wise's first film, who was the editor of Citizen Kane, and he later directed The Sound of Music and West Side Story and many big ones. So that's like his first debut. But yeah, I haven't seen Double Indemnity, which the second I see it, I'm sure that most of my list is going to be completely out of date. But I have it pretty much split between my two top two, which are To Have and Have Not and A Canterbury Tale, which are two very different movies. One of them very much like old Hollywood kind of film noir war era, To Have and Have Not, which is almost just like a Casablanca remake. So I give that Best Picture and also Best Actress with the debut of Lauren Bacall, who I think is just great in it. And but for picture, or for director, screenplay, and then actor, I'm going to go with Canterbury Tale, which is just really strong, really great war film, but also not. It's more of a allegory. And it's crazy to me that it's a movie about a guy pouring glue in people's hair, and it's so moving by the end. And then with the final two, with supporting actor and actress, I'm going with Hoagy Carmichael, To Have and Have Not. The song he came up with for the film is really strong. It's really catchy and really good. And then Sheila Sim for A Canterbury Tale. The way she plays her character of the kind of person who's running from her past and has to learn from it is really strong. And I really like the way she plays the ending scene. Pause for technical difficulties graphic. All right, so welcome. We had a little problem, but now we're back. So yeah, so we just finished up our picks, and yeah, so kind of just what would you say your general thoughts on these years are?
I mean, I think there are still some blind spots that I want to hit to feel more confident about it. But in general, it's kind of nice that there are certain ones that feel like they kind of rise to the top as like the gold standard for what this era represents in film.
Yeah, the main reason I wanted to do this one first is that as like the start is that comparing like the 4 years before this, besides 39, which I do think is really strong, I do think this era like a huge explosion in like the films I'm really into. Because like you have like 1941, John Huston and Orson Welles did their first film. And then 42, David Lean did his first film. Emmerich Pressburger did his first. So it's like, you have an absolute insane explosion of stuff that I'm like really passionate about. And yeah, I do think it's like kind of, you can definitely tell when the war comes in, it kind of affects the quality of films for a few reasons. But I still think, disregarding that, that every year is really strong, and every year I can find at least one 5-star film. If it wasn't for the Casablanca loophole where we call it 43, I wouldn't be able to say that because I haven't seen another 5-star from 43, but you know.
I'm very stingy with my fives, so I wouldn't have too many, but there's a lot of stuff I like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the first to admit I've given too many fives. So I've given like, I don't know, maybe like 250 like movies ever a 5-star. Like I really do not have probably high enough standards.
I might have 10% of that.
Yeah. But yeah, so everyone, thanks so much for watching. And if you want, put your picks or put just your thoughts on a film of ours that we mentioned that you really like. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, and hopefully we'll do a follow-up at some point about the next series of films. So yeah.
Yeah, finish off the 40s.
Yeah, which I'll have a lot of crazy takes probably. I don't know. So I think this time we kind of lined up with the Academy, especially I think both of us, all of our winners at least got nominated for something, which I definitely think that there are eras where that would not be the case. Especially times when like the Academy was very out of touch with like what the
For sure.
guys of movies were. So yeah. So thanks everyone for watching, and have a great day, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
See y'all later.